Call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes. The next item is a moment of silence to be led by the board vice president.
Thank you. As we begin this meeting, let us pause for a 60-second moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or engage in any other silent activity. Thank you.
The next item is the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Sean Cunnane and Dallas Frisbee. And also they're going to be assisted by Michaela Hayes.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. There we go.
So which one of you is Dallas?
I am.
Are you sure?
Yes, sir.
Who is Sean? All right. So what grade are you in, Sean?
11.
11th. And what grade are you in?
I'm 11 too.
All right. So what was your favorite thing to do this year?
Just go outside.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, or just working.
Okay. How about you?
My favorite thing was school.
School?
Yeah.
Now, Sean, aren't you I wanted to say you're a trainer, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
Don't you help the athletes and those kinds of things?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought I saw you out there the other day.
Yeah.
Do you get to ice their shoulders and knees?
Do.
You do?
Only for volleyball and basketball.
Okay.
They won't let me do spring sports because they're afraid I might get injured. So I just hop in the training room. They won't let me do any spring, just during fall.
Well, that's pretty good. We appreciate
Yeah.
what you're doing. That's awesome.
Thanks.
How about you, Dallas? You enjoyed school.
Yeah.
What else did you enjoy?
Let's see. I'm not sure.
Did you go to Stillwater to the?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do there? What was your sport?
Bocce.
Oh my gosh, that's the most fun thing ever.
Yes, that is.
Now, did you get to go out on the field and all of that at Oklahoma State?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we
All
are.
right. Now, are you a OSU fan?
Yes, not really. I'm Arkansas. I'm not. Yeah.
Dude, you're like my favorite guy ever.
Yes, I am. I'm everybody.
Is he your best friend?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, do you guys mind if Miss Kelly, she's the president here next to me, can we take a picture with you?
Yeah.
All right, if you guys will come right over here, we'll take a picture with you.
Yes. Yes.
All right, on three. 1, 2, 3.
That's pretty funny, wasn't it? Yeah. So what did you do?
I was just a partner and I got to take them to Olympic Village.
Okay. So did you stay down there with them and everything and help? And what grade are you in?
I'm going to eighth grade.
Going into 8th grade. All right. Well, they appreciate you doing all that. So you got to practice with them and everything. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're back.
Next item on the agenda is the formal adoption of the agenda. I did want to call a couple of items. Oh, I messed something up.
No, you didn't.
Okay.
I think, are we?
We are on the formal adoption,
Okay,
then we
good,
come to the
good.
awards.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so we're all on target here. Formal adoption, I wanted to call a couple of items that are going to be deleted, number 9 and number 12. So with that, I would certainly entertain a motion to that effect.
Make a motion to accept the agenda with the noted changes of number 9 and number 12 being deleted.
Second.
We have a motion and second to formally adopt the agenda with the exception of item number 9 and item number 12. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes. The next item are the minutes of the May 9th, 2016 regular meeting minutes. I would entertain any comments or questions prior to entertaining a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the May 9th, 2016 regular meeting minutes. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes. The next item under awards and achievements is Miss Debbie Renz.
Dr. Mendenhall, President Kelly, members of the board, I am very honored to present to you the Special Olympic team. This group went to Stillwater May 11th through the 13th. We took 80 athletes, 20 coaches, 33 peer coaches, and hundreds of family members that showed up to support their kids. They did a fabulous job. It's quite an event to travel with them for 3 days for 24-hour cycles. A lot goes on, and there is a lot of cooperation with all of those groups of people to make it a very pleasurable trip with all these kids, and they did such a fantastic job. I want to introduce to you Katie Fly and Linda Moses. They are the head coaches, and I'll let them come talk for a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Katie Fly. I work at the Freshman Academy, and I had one of the honors to be one of the head coaches for Special Olympics this year. We truly could not have taken so many children without the support of various departments in the BA public school system. Transportation played a huge role as we needed buses with special equipment, and they allowed us to get all the kids there and shuffle them around Stillwater. And then also the athletic department played a huge role this year. They allowed us to get all the uniforms for the kids. They also let us borrow their very nice athletic buses, which were awesome. And we're hoping to take those next year. And then Mr. Ellett and Miss Melinda Knight, who are the athletic directors, were very helpful in helping us just get all the things that we needed. We got to practice in the indoor facility, which, if anybody has been outside in the springtime, it gets pretty warm or gets pretty rainy. So it was nice to not have to cancel practice since we were able to have it indoors. So we just wanted to thank everybody. We really couldn't have done any of this without the help of the district, and we're very, very proud of the kids. They did awesome. They're all, well, we're missing quite a few tonight, but if you see anybody in a black BA Special Olympic shirt, that's who we are. So I'll let Linda talk. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having us tonight. I'm Linda Moses. I'm at Oneida Ridge Middle School. I helped with coaching this year. I did the fundraising, which was a task. I have never done that before. But it was a lot of fun, and I got to meet a lot of new people in the district and a lot of the citizens out there, and put our name out there for Special Olympics, and I was very proud to be able to do that. We spent, it cost to stay in Stillwater for all the kids that we took. It was a little over $8,000. So it takes quite a bit of money to take these kids so that they can go have fun, and it just really builds their self-esteem, and I'm all behind that. We appreciate the people that did come out for our fundraiser. We usually have a chili cook-off, and we have a silent auction for baskets. This year we're going to add some spaghetti to it, so we're going to liven it up a little bit, I guess, this year. And anyway, I just want to thank you guys for your support. And there was one other thing I needed to say, and I forgot what it was. Anyway, okay, well, maybe next board meeting. Anyway, thank you guys for having us. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your support. We hope you guys catch us and can come out to our fundraisers and support us and send us next year. Thank you.
Collectively, our team brought home 21 gold medals, 28 silver medals, 18 bronze, and numerous ribbons. And I would really like for the kids to be able to take a little parade and come walking up in front of the board members here, give them a high five or something, and let that medal bling a little bit around your necks tonight. Let them hear it. Come on, kids.
Go this way right here. Yeah. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Good job. I see some gold there. There's some gold right there. Great job. What do you got there? Gold, silver, and bronze. Great job. Great job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Thank you very much. Thanks for everything. Thank you. Great job. Man. Great job. Looks like it.
Let's take an intermission. Let's just take an intermission while they exit.
If you guys would go ahead and make your way on out, and then you can go ahead and visit on out in the hallway, that would be wonderful. That way we can continue the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, I think they're just hemmed up there.
It's kind of like salmon swimming.
Yeah, I
upstream.
think they stopped at the cookies. Yeah, there's no cookies left. They're gone. Dinner.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, Dr. Mendenhall.
Yes, tonight I'd like to bring forward Miss Toni Washington, and she will be honoring and talking about one of our principals, and so I'll turn it over to her at this moment.
Thank you and good evening. Never want to give a preacher a microphone. I wrote my speech. So. Good evening to everyone. President Cheryl Kelly and Dr. Mendenthal, we are very, very happy to be here, and we thank you for allowing us to come and make this awesome presentation. We at CGM Inc. are a nonprofit organization. We've been in existence in the greater Tulsa community for the past 20 plus years. We started out in 1996 as a not-for-profit corporation. This evening we're honoring the principal at Aspen Creek Elementary School. He was honored at our 4th annual Greater Tulsa Empowerment Awards dinner at the Okapi Event Center on April the 23rd, and we wanted to make sure that everyone knew he was unable to be there because of the Olympics that were going on in, I think, was it Oklahoma City, right? And so he greeted me as I came in with a smile and a big hug and thanked me for being here. But we are here. There are some of us out as guests this evening of the board, and there are also, I believe, some teachers who are from Aspen Creek Elementary School who came to honor their leader. Principal Smith was elected to receive this award because of his personal commitment to education, as demonstrated through the excellence he displays on a daily basis at Aspen Creek. His character and quality of leadership and excellent service is a tremendous asset to the student population there and the parents of his school. Please join me tonight. I don't want to be lengthy in recognizing someone I have a lot of respect for, and am proud to present this award to Mr. Larry Smith, the principal of Aspen Creek.
Thank you. The next item under employment, Dr. Mendenhall.
Yes. Let me go to the podium to do this. Well, thank you very much. I could probably leave at this point and just be as fulfilled as I've ever been. I'll tell you, those kids were just incredible. So, Mr. Smith, we are really proud of you and the award that you received too. So, wanted to tonight talk to you a little bit about, anytime that you have a big district as we do, we have people that actually sometimes will have new positions that they will take. So what I'm doing tonight is looking at our principals' positions. We have actually 2 or 3 that we're going to talk about tonight, but what happened was Mr. Scott Kiker was recently named as the high school principal there in Collinsville, Oklahoma. So Collinsville High School has, if you recall, we actually had moved him recently to the Oliver Middle School position. He had served as an assistant principal at the Freshman Academy, and previous to that was at Centennial. So we felt very good about, he had interviewed for the position with the committee, and they had chosen him, and we felt very comfortable placing him there. But as things happen, and he felt like it was the best for he and his family to move forward, we felt like that it was okay to let someone like that leave our district and move to a place that he really wanted to be. So we really are proud of him. But in that event, we also had another person that actually had been in kind of the entire process. And Miss Wendy Johnson, we had moved her to an elementary. We had moved her to Oakcrest Elementary. She had been the last 3 years at Oliver Middle School as an assistant. So We felt very comfortable with placing her into that position once we heard this news. So tonight, on item number 8, I'm asking you to approve the hiring of Miss Wendy Johnson to the position of building principal at Oliver Middle School.
Any questions or comments?
Recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the assignment of employment for Miss Wendy Johnson to serve as principal at Oliver Middle School, with such employment subject to a mutually acceptable and fully executed written contract of employment. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly.
Yes.
Item number 9 was actually removed, but I think if I don't explain kind of the thinking behind it, it will be hard to understand number 10, so I'm going to kind of combine those together so you understand what's going on. In item number 10, of course, with Wendy Johnson moving from Oak Crest and moving into another position, we had an available space or available spot at Oak Crest Elementary. So what we're doing at this point is we felt very comfortable with recommending to you Kristen Hennis. Kristen has been in a building principal, or actually an assistant principal role at Country Lane Intermediate, and has done a fabulous job. Kristen has been a longtime educator. I believe this is, looking at her information, it looks like she has been teaching, since 2000. And so when you look and see some of the experiences that she's had working with elementary students and then moving into an administrative position, we felt very comfortable with placing her at Oak Crest. Understanding that at Country Lane Intermediate, you have quite a few students. I want to say there are about 800 students. So she shares a lot of the work with that principal. So when you look at that, she's going to a building that has about half that amount of students, less than 500 students, and we feel very comfortable with Ms. Hennis and her skill set. So tonight I'm recommending to you Ms. Kristen Hennis as the principal at Oak Crest Elementary.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Recommend approval.
Second.
Have a motion and second to approve Ms. Kristen Hennis for employment to serve as principal at Arrowhead. Is it Arrowhead?
No, it is actually
Oak
it is
Crest
Oak
Elementary.
Crest.
I'm sorry. Oak Crest Elementary School, with such employment subject to a mutually acceptable and fully executed written contract of employment. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly.
Yes.
If you would allow me to kind of talk a little bit about kind of the transitions, this will help us as we move forward into other areas. Item number 9 was pulled tonight. It will actually be brought back to you at a later date. And item number 9 is to hire a principal at Arrowhead Elementary. You might remember that we had placed Jennifer Peterson out of this building. She had been the director of elementary education, and after further review, we've just felt like that it was going to be very hard for us to continue to progress in our elementary instruction without her in that role. So in that process, we had spent some time talking with Erica Vassis. If you recall, Erica Vassis had been moved from Creekwood Elementary as an assistant principal, and we were choosing to move her over to Wolf Creek as an assistant principal. And in doing that, we had a conversation with her about going to serve as the principal at Arrowhead. In the meantime, her husband was transferred to Tucson, Arizona. And so we will miss Miss Vassis very much. But tonight I was planning and going to move forward with recommending Erica Vassis to you in that role. But because of her husband moving, she thought that would be a good thing to move with him. And so they are going to be in Tucson, Arizona, and she will become a an administrator in that school district. So we wish her well, but I wanted to kind of explain why that was on the agenda tonight. Thank you very much.
All right, the next item on the agenda are the comments from the public. Seeing that there are none, we would move to the next item on the agenda, which is the legislative update. Dr. Janet Dunlop.
What about the
Item number 12 was removed.
sure. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, President Kelly, Dr. Mendenhall, and members of the board. So we did have quite a bit of action right at the end of the legislative session, as many of you witnessed through media outlets. They waited till the very, very last minute to get our budget cleared, but I'm not going to talk about the budget today. There are a few items that we probably need to review just so that we're aware of some changes. The first one is Senate Bill 1105. I believe I've reviewed this with you before, but it's by Senator Ford. And this allows students who've been denied a diploma by the school district to re-enroll to get the diploma, but they don't have to enroll in 6 hours of rigor. This may not seem like just a housekeeping thing, but this is huge for high school students who are only missing a credit or two to be able to go back, get those taken care of, and get the diploma. So this will help our students tremendously to finish out their degree. This was signed into law on April 19th. So, okay, the next one. This is huge. This is House Bill 3218. It's under Senate bills for some reason, but House Bill 3218 eliminates our EOI testing, and I'm surprised not to hear applause in the audience right now, because this has been a long time coming. From the very day that we started our end of instruction test, it's really just not been a positive experience. We haven't received any good information from these. They've been meaningless for students and have created a trap to prevent students from graduating from high school. So a lot of people will have the question, well, what about ACE law and what does that do? Within this law, they decoupled graduation requirements from the assessment. So no longer is there going to be an assessment that determines graduation. What they've done instead is they've kind of tossed it back to the local school districts to say, okay, well, you're going to determine then how a student shows proficiency. The state board will work on that. They'll promulgate rules. We don't have those yet, but we are expecting those. But some details on exactly what it does. It eliminates all 7 end of instruction tests. It eliminates the 7th grade geography test, the 5th grade social studies, and 8th grade history, the fine arts competency and tests. Now what it retains is English language arts and math grades 3 through 8 and once in high school. The reason it retains this, these are federally mandated. And that's the way the law read, is that we'll follow what is federally mandated, but if it's not, we're not going to add on additional tests and the craziness that we've been experiencing the last several years. It does also retain 1 science in middle school and high school. This is also federally required. And then a state law is the 1 history in high school. We tried to work on that one, but we were not able to eliminate it through this legislative session. I know there are people who feel strongly one way or the other, but in this climate of trying to eliminate all non-necessary, federally necessary tests, we really were pushing to try to eliminate that one. So hopefully in the next session. Another little side note that hasn't been mentioned a lot, it also eliminates the need for remediation next year. So next school year, there's not going to be any required remediation. We've been tossing around, well, what does that mean with that budget that usually the remediation is attached to? We don't know yet. So we'll have to wait and see what's happening with that. That has been sent to Governor Fallon for signing. I heard today in a news release from Superintendent Hoffmeister that it was signed. Now, I haven't actually seen that out in media yet, but that's what she had stated in one of her announcements.
Dr. Dunlop, does that open us to any liabilities from students that maybe didn't get their diplomas, that would have lost either scholarship dollars or weren't able to go to the service or whatever it may have been?
And that is a great question, and we just don't have any guidance yet on this at all because it's so new. It was literally just signed, so we don't know yet. We are attending our COSA law conference this week, So hopefully we'll get a little guidance from COSA and OASA to guide us down which path we should take with those students, should they come forward.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one, Senate Bill 911. This is by Senator Sharp. It permits a school district to allow the Board of Education to adopt a procedure allowing administrative personnel to issue fines to students. I've mentioned this one before too. It's kind of one of those service. It's if you've done something wrong, then Mr. Perry over here can be assigned to clean the grounds after school, or something that provides a service back to the school to pay back a fine for disciplinary actions. It's interesting. It does, of course, not allow you to do this with students under 8 years of age, because they really wouldn't understand what you were doing, and of course students on an IEP, especially if it's related to their disability. And this was already signed into law by Governor Fallon. It's not clicking. Okay. Oop. Now it clicked twice. Okay, the next one. This is important just because should we get textbook funds? Right now we have no textbooks funds. They've all been cut. But this does allow us now to use textbook funds for technology. This is huge as we're starting through this one-to-one initiative. So this is very important for our district especially. And then House Bill 2649, this allows us to use our teacher conferences in the evenings, 2 school days to be counted for purposes in one 24-hour period. A lot of times we couldn't use the evening conferences and the next morning conferences, and now this allows school districts to have that flexibility to do that and count that as a school day. Excuse me, and this was signed into law. And House Bill 2957, this was huge for principals and teachers alike. The TLE was another one of those bills that was pushed through with all of this, these mandates in the last several years. This removes the requirement for the quantitative measure, and that's what attaches test scores to teachers. This eliminates that quantitative piece, so all we'll have now is the qualitative piece. We've actually really appreciated it. It has given us the chance to really have some great conversations with teachers, and we feel pretty strongly from feedback from our principals that it's been a good thing. This does have a professional development piece that's going to be phased in, where it's almost like an IEP, but it's a professional development that will be attached teacher by teacher based on whatever they need as far as their development. And I'm sure that will be something, especially in our district, that the principal and the teacher will develop together, so it's not going to be something that's sprung on a teacher. And this was signed into law as well.
Dr. Dunlop,
Yes,
could you clarify something for me? It is my understanding, I may be incorrect on this, that the teachers will not have to be evaluated on a year-to-year basis.
That's correct. Thank you
Okay.
for reminding me of that. It does allow that career teachers who score high on the scale, I believe it's like a 4.5 or 4.6 on the scale, it may be higher. Anyway, if they score at a certain range, it's that highly qualified range, basically, that they do not have to be evaluated every single year. And the beauty of this is it frees principals to be able to use those really skilled teachers as mentors for other teachers. Other teachers can come in and watch them teach, or there's all kinds of ways that we can use them as teacher leaders within our district.
Yeah, I do think that's very positive.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda happens to be the general consent items, which are items number 14 through item number 66. I would certainly entertain a question or entertain a motion. I have not had any questions or any items that have been brought to my attention on this, on the consent.
It's
Through
not
48.
item 66.
Through 48.
It's 48, item 48.
Well, did I go too far ahead?
Yeah,
I did,
you
didn't
went
I?
another page.
I am so sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll agree to that, but
Yeah,
Second.
I was trying to move this thing along. So 48, thank you, Dr. Williamson.
Recommend approval. Second.
So we have a motion and second to approve the general consent items 14 through, make sure I'm correct, 48. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is item number 49, under Superintendent Board of Education Communications, and Dr. Mendenhall.
Yes, I bring to you tonight the approval or disapproval of the McCrell Superintendent Evaluation Instrument. The first, going into my 7th year in the superintendency here in Broken Arrow. And in that, we have used an evaluation instrument that was kind of a hybrid, to be honest. It's been utilized, I think, at other school districts across the state, and we've utilized that, and it's really served us well. But we felt like that going out and maybe going to a vendor might be the best, during this next phase, to go through an evaluation instrument that is written, tried and true through another company. So we're looking at McCrell's Superintendent Evaluation System. It has 4 components. It has component number 1 is purposeful community. Component number 2 is managing change. Component number 3 is focus of leadership. And component number 4 is management. The interesting thing, it does have a rubric that kind of gives you some insight into how, 1 being developing, 2 being proficient, 3 being accomplished, and then 4 being distinguished. So if you look at it, it really kind of gives you some prompts of what you should be looking for within these specific categories. And I do believe that this evaluation instrument will give us a great foundation for us to have great conversation, for me to improve my craft as the superintendent, and for you to provide great feedback to me. So we will be developing some type of, at our board retreat that we're having in a couple of weeks, we do have a presenter that will be coming to present this information and kind of guide us through this, this process. So I'll try to answer any questions that you may have. I know that there are other superintendents in the state that are on the McCrell evaluation instrument. I don't think it's a requirement at all, but it is something that has been helpful and useful. So we are going to recommend to you tonight that we use the McCrell Superintendent Evaluation System.
Dr. Mendenhall, I would like to thank you certainly for engaging in having a thoughtful eye, and certainly looking at within the framework of our discussions as a board, and with you as superintendent, and our growth as a board and your growth as a superintendent, opportunities wherein we can certainly make the evaluation more seamless. And I think this is going to give us a great opportunity to do that. And so I'm looking very much forward to the training that we're going to be having during the retreat. And I just wanted to thank you first, and certainly if there are no other questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and second to approve the McCrell as a superintendent evaluation instrument. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, item number 50 is to present the 2016 budget status update. We started this, I believe, back in January, discussing the budget from the state, and then how it has trickled down to our school district. I want to say, first off, thank you to our CFO and the things that he's done to really get us into a really good position as a school district. It's been a very, very rocky spring, just because we've had to kind of follow the bouncing ball. We didn't know what was really going to be the end result. On the last day, at the last moment, I think they struck the gavel, and they chose to give us a budget at that point in time. So what I want to do tonight is really kind of give you more of what it means to us. I know that we have a lot of probably big budget conversation from the state, at the state level. And there's a lot of things that we wish they would have done, but I think we've got current reality now, and that we need to probably talk a little bit more tonight about what are we going to do, what is our plan, and what does it look like for us moving forward. So, Mr. Thompson, I'm going to give you the microphone and let you just kind of talk us through it, and
Okay.
kind of go from there.
And a lot of this information you're going to see again when we go into executive session as we discuss negotiations. But as the budget has been completed and now people are evaluating this, it's still somewhat of a moving target. When the budget first came out, the directive was that the formula was going to go down $10 a weighted student. And then a week later it came out that it was going to be $37 a weighted student. And so we're currently at 6:35 p.m. on Monday, we're utilizing that projection of $37 a student. So what we've calculated is we've estimated that we'll have a total student population of 19,079 students, which is 278 students increase above where we are today. Obviously that's conservative. We'll probably have more students than that, but that gives us a place to be. And the factor that COSA is giving us is $3,013. And to put that in perspective, that is a little bit more than 2006, 2007, and a little bit less than 2007, 2008 factors for our students. Sometimes individuals say things that you just make you pause. And so we had a term limited senator this last week that indicated that things weren't really that bad in education because we had $2.8 billion in 2008, and now we have $2,866. So we've had a 2% increase in that time period, but made no indication about the 50,000 more students that we have statewide. So you're thinking, but that's the kind of conversations that you get into as you proceed through this. So the way we're looking at it right now, based on all the factors that I put in there, both the chargeables and all that sort of thing, that state aid will decrease for next year a total of $3.1 million. And then in addition to that, as you heard Janet say, that we will not receive any textbook allocation, which is another $893,000. So the total right now of the cuts is just at $4 million. Now we'll say we have not experienced our final cut for this fiscal year. There's one more that will be in the June allocation. We expect that to be anywhere from $350,000 to $500,000, and that is still yet to come. And they're waiting to the last the last distribution of state aid to just make that reduction. So while I say that's included in this dollar amount, remains to be seen. All of my colleagues anticipate more revenue failures next year, and so everyone is being extremely cautious as we proceed through. But that's where we are right now. The remaining things to be determined, and I don't envy the state superintendent or the school state board, because what actually occurred was the activities funds were cut to then move the money into the formula. So when you looked at the news bites, they kept the formula whole, which as you can see was 37 per student short, but what they took the money from was the activity budgets. A portion of that was the textbooks. The remaining things that the state board has to decide would be alt ed, professional development, RSA, and ACE. And as Janet talked about remediation, it could feed into these, that if you don't have to remediate, why do you need some of these items, let's say ACE. And so we will see when the state board meets as to what cuts they will make and what adjustments they will have. Obviously there are special programs within the activities budget, and I'm just using one that I know for sure. You have the street school at Tulsa Public. It's in the activities budget. So is that funded? Is it not? Is it, all those things, and everybody's in wait. But all those four items that were still remaining is $804,000. So if all of that is cut, I don't know that it will be, but if all is cut, then the total reduction is right at $167 a student. And so we had been projecting at $200 a student, so we weren't that far off, just coming in a different form. The way it was in the past, And as I indicated, the formula is where we were in 2006, 2007, but all these items, maybe not all those items because ACE wasn't in place and RSA, but like textbooks and those line items were in addition to that. And so we're obviously as a whole behind from 2006, 2007. So if we factor all those items in there, and we'll have the conversations about options the board has for negotiations, we can still maintain what we'll end our fund balance with and move forward. So I'd try to answer any questions that you have. The biggest thing that we have right now is waiting on the state board to finalize how they're going to allocate the cut resources that they had.
Well, go ahead.
Talk about, you had mentioned the 278 students just for growth, and I know it's a predictor. What are your thoughts on adding back? I mean, there are people that have, I get stopped on the street,
right.
Hey, you guys got more money, right? And so are you guys going to add all the teachers back?
Right, and so what we're going to have some of those conversations in executive session about what we'll do in negotiations, but I am anticipating that there's going to be some additional positions that we're going to need for growth and for class size. And so right now, I'm estimating what that would be, which I've factored in there to accommodate moving forward. But we were asking, particularly the secondary campuses, to do to finish their schedules, get those done so we can see where the holes are, so we can try to fill those as best we can. Now the short is, yes, we didn't get cut $200 a student, but we did get cut potentially $167. So that you can't add everything back that we did ask the board to make reductions on. But it is better than we had anticipated, so we do have some options to address a few issues. And I do think, just with growth, that there's going to be some additional staff that we're going to have to hire back. And if you're asking me today how many, I think that would be probably around 10, maybe more than that, but I would think that would be a fair estimate. And that may be in actual positions, or it may be, for instance, of the secondary positions, it may be some purchase of plans and that sort of thing that accumulate up to a full FTE. But once we have those, the schedules and what that means and where their spots are, then we would be able to try to address those as a whole, not just individually by campus.
Most of you, though, within the CFO group determined that there are going to be several revenue failures potentially for next year.
Well, there's a couple. They're believing. First of all, they did some changes to revenue items that they came up with estimates, and I will just tell you this: the way that works is they say, okay, what if we raise cigarette tax to $1.50? Okay, we'll just use that one, as everyone's familiar with that. And they send that off, and then they come back with there's evaluating, so that'll generate X number of dollars. And the legislators use that as their calculation. Well, if that's not correct, then obviously you have an issue. The good news is right now, and I don't want to jinx it, even though it's the budget is built on $40 a barrel, and we're at 48, so there is some good news there if it doesn't plummet again. But what they're anticipating is the question is, are the expectations of revenue going to meet what the projections are from the income tax double dip thing that they eliminated and that sort of thing? Is that actually going to generate the revenue that they anticipate? And so that's one of the things that they're concerned about. The other part is that part of the budget is built on one-time money, using rainy day funds and so forth and so on. So we're already starting next year, as we plan for the next year, we're already in a hole. And our hope,
that is a great point to make, is that a lot of that's one-time money. So,
and our hope is that we, as bad as it could possibly be, that they would not do that, that they would, leave that alone. Even though I'm happy that they use the rainy day fund. I don't want, but yeah. The problem is it's not going to. You can't go back there again, and so you would like at some point to say we're not going to do that anymore moving forward. And then you're not looking at already. You could have a conversation that we could be, $200 or $300 million in the hole for the next year, already before we even start the year. And so your goal is to, start at least at zero and move forward. So those are the kind of reasons why they're looking at, or my colleagues are saying, well, there could be another revenue failure and so forth. And there's no, we're not positive of the calculations with the loss of positions just in education alone, how that will impact the economy. There's just a lot of factors out there, and so they're very cautious. And so I think across the state, you're going to see districts very cautious as they move forward, and probably a lot more action as far as doing things after January when midterm comes out, and if you'll begin to hear the rumors or not of failures, and or did the factors go down again because of midterm. Because there's still going to be people moving in, there's still going to be growth, just like we're anticipating, and so that there's going to have to be a funding mechanism. So will it exceed the 1.5% cushion that they have?
To sustain the growth in the state of Oklahoma, I mean, there has to be, in some way, the legislature has to address new sources of revenue coming into our public schools.
Well, you have new sources of revenue, or you have elimination of credits and a variety of things like that. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there. You have to just be willing to do it. And so, those are the things, and these are not new conversations that we have. It's just, are you willing to do those type things? And there were a few credits that were eliminated this year, but there's a whole litany of more. I think one of the big ones that everyone is, going to be monitoring closely is, what is the revenue coming off of internet sales? Is it really what they anticipate it to be, or will the people stop buying, on the internet because it isn't, they don't get the tax, tax free as it was. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll just see, and that's why not everyone, but a lot of people are very, very conservative on what they're anticipating.
Mr. Thompson, they said today that the collections were down 7%, something today. At what point, consecutive months, in the education world, when collections are down, do you say, okay, we're going to have a revenue failure?
Well, it has to be.
There's a threshold.
Yeah, there's a threshold of 95% of what is anticipated, and so once we start the new fiscal year, it won't be until they exceed 95% or undercollected by more than 5% of the estimate as a whole that they declare a revenue failure. So it'll be, as you noticed last year, it wasn't until February-ish that they began to serve notice that there was going to be a revenue failure eventually, because there were months in the first part of the year that were overcollected. Mm-hmm. And so there's a couple ways of looking at that. The lower our collections this year are, and when you're moving forward, then you're using those as your threshold, right? And so next year, if it's, it'd have to be even lower than it is now to be under the 95%, because they're using this year's collections to base their budget off of, because they can only allocate 95% of what they expect to collect. So that's how that works, and so they will, they won't declare a revenue failure until that we're over 5% of the whole undercollected. So if it's $1 million, you have to be undercollected by 5% of that whole number, not just by month. So it's a cumulative effect.
Any other questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item under Operations Services, Mr. Bob Tolomeo.
Good evening, President Kelly, Dr. Mendenhall, members of the board. I'm here to present the monthly construction presentation. We are excited that we are finally started on these. Currently, we have Sequoyah Middle School and the new elementary school both going on right now. Out at Sequoyah Middle School, we've started both the demo portion and the cafeteria and fine arts additions. And these are just some renderings of what it will possibly look like, what it will look like. And this one is the back of the house, which is the cafeteria and fine arts addition. This is the area between the two buildings, kind of looking back at the fine arts addition. We've done a lot of grading out there already, stripped the topsoil, and we're starting to bring in new dirt. And this is the inside of that middle hallway. We have actually completely gutted it already. There's no ceilings. You can see some HVAC ductwork just kind of hanging in the classroom. And starting this week, we are going to start putting all of the rough-in back into place so we can start closing and making it look like classrooms again. Out at New Elementary School 15, the weather has been not cooperative with us. It's been a little rainy out there. Again, some renderings of what it's going to look like. This is the media center, nice and colorful. And then we have mobilized, we have started grading. This is a green site, so we're looking forward to that. Out at the high school, we're nailing down our last bit of our drafting on where the building's going to go, how many square feet it's going to take. And then we'll start, once they start back at school in August, we'll finish those last programming meetings with the teachers. We have been talking to the administration and all those things. And we have started...
Mr. Ptolomeo, could you clarify when you indicated that you were going to be talking with staff? Did you indicate, or at least I thought you did, that you were going to seek some front-end input, or is that after the process begins?
We've been talking to the administration at this point. Right now we're just kind of talking generalities. So, and then once we nail down the actual square footage of the classrooms, we'll talk to, hey, what's going to actually go in here? We're not quite to that stage of what's actually going to go into the classroom.
I think they've been shown all of the stuff that we're seeing. I think they've reviewed all of that, so they know where the classrooms are going. They know how many. They know that there's going to be a common space that'll be built kind of in front of the gym. So I think those things.
Yeah.
But I think the specifics of who's going to go into those classrooms haven't been determined and all that. So.
Yeah, some of their main ideas that they brought to the table when we talked to the administration was, we need more eating space, we need more classrooms, and we need just kind of an open area where people can come out and do some projects. So we're trying to create all those things.
One of the reasons why I brought it up, when we did our survey back, it was at least a year ago, one of the things that was brought forward was that in some cases, and certainly not in all, but there was a feeling that they may not have gotten input prior to the certain phases of the project, and things got in place maybe a little bit ahead, and they weren't able to go back and maybe do something a little bit different. And so I was just inquiring about the process itself, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. And this is kind of a rendering of what it will look like walking up from the south. We have started on the 2 parking lots out there as well. So one will be a staff parking lot over to the west of the auxiliary gym, and one will be a visitor lot just north of the existing visitor lot at that front loop.
I do want to talk about, when you're talking about that, the other thing that's occurring on that campus is we're hosting Engage OK, which is the state superintendent's leadership conference for this side of the state. So we'll literally have a couple of thousand teachers from all over the state coming to our high school campus. So we've just met with the State Department of Education, and Bob and his team have done a great job. But with all of this being done and the parking lots and all of those things, I mean, we're going to get to show off our facilities, but we're also going to have to kind of work around some things. And on top of that, I think we have Drums of Summer that are going on. So it's going to be really interesting. Interesting time.
West of the auxiliary gym, is that across that road?
It'll actually be directly west of the auxiliary gym. It'll kind of, you'll pull up.
On the east or the west of that road that runs by there?
On the east of the road that runs next to it.
There's enough room in there?
About 50 spots.
It's going to be on that side. They've been asking for it for a long time. A lot of the coaches want to park right there, and so we're going to put a space there so that they can all park.
There used to be a gravel lot between the band building, old building J, and the auxiliary gym that everybody used to park at. So I think they want that back.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Next.
And then just Kirkland Activity Complex.
I do have one. Mr. Ptolomeo, there will be a safe room at Sequoyah, is that right?
Yes, and at the new elementary school.
The locations that we're building new, we're trying to do that or building on. We're trying to do safe rooms. It's very, very difficult because when you build from brand new, it's great. It's just when you retrofit anything, it's very difficult to do that. But I appreciate you bringing that up because we have worked to try to make sure we have safe rooms every place that we're going and touching it.
Okay, we're done with that, so let's move to the next item.
And that one is mine as well, and it is for change order number 1 at Sequoyah Middle School. This is, if you recall, when we did the GMP, we had taken an alternate to deduct a serving line. Well, Ms. Goodacre has evaluated her budget, and she would like to add that one back using her funds. So this is change order number 1 for $48,734.
Okay, I would entertain certainly any questions that you have, but if not, a motion.
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the change order number 1 for the 2016 Sequoyah Middle School additions and renovations project. Additional serving line in the cafeteria resulting in a net increase of $48,734 to Manhattan Construction Company's contract with payment from the Child Nutrition Fund. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes. The next item, Mr. Blackburn.
Good evening, President Kelly, Dr. Mendenhall, and Board of Education. Bringing tonight for your approval the bid submission for the lowest responsible bidder Summit Bus to provide 4 77-passenger conventional school buses, 1 28-passenger Type C special education bus, 4 14-passenger Type A activity buses in the amount of $693,069 to be paid out of 2009 bond funds.
Any questions? I would entertain a motion.
Recommend approval.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the bid submitted by the lowest responsible bidder, Summit Bus, providing 4 77-passenger conventional school buses, 1 28-passenger Type C special education bus, and 4 14-passenger Type A activity buses for the district. All the bidding was conducted pursuant to the Oklahoma Competitive Bidding Act, and the total cost of the district is $693,069, and it will be paid from the 2009 bond funds. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes. Next item, Mr. Grant Moore.
Good evening. I'm here to seek your approval of a donation from the Liberty PTA. And I've asked Mrs. Orr and Mrs. Crow to come and join me. This is to provide a concrete pad for Liberty Elementary. The pad will be used for a greenhouse that was purchased with activity funds, and the district maintenance department will coordinate that installation, and I'll let them give you specifics.
Okay.
Good evening. So we have an annual pumpkin run where our kids do laps, and they have people sponsor them, their families and friends. And this year we incorporated our Tiger Challenge for a week, and we spent a day doing each character trait for the Tiger Challenge, and we did activities and we learned about it and making healthy choices because it was also during our Red Ribbon Week. And then the children, it was culminating activity was the pumpkin run, and we invited Mrs. Gates back, and she dressed up as a pumpkin and ran with the children. And they did an outstanding job. They just were fantastic, and they were really excited about it. And they raised over $6,000 for our activity fund. And so with that, we've purchased some iPads, iPad covers, and then they wanted a big project. And so Miss Kelly Collins is our PE teacher, and she does a fantastic job teaching the kids about horticulture. And we kind of have a makeshift greenhouse right now, and they love it. And so we had this idea to get this other larger greenhouse, but with that, we asked our PTA to get involved, and so they stepped up, and we couldn't do it without them. So this is Sharonda Crow.
Hello. Okay, so anytime the PTA is asked to do something, we are going to do everything we can to step in for our 750 plus students at Liberty Elementary. And this became a project that, okay, so we need to get the concrete. We need to get the people to lay the concrete. We have some great board members, and we found out, we were going into our unit meeting, and we found out that all of this was donated. and Mid-Continent and Comtech, and there is a representative today from Comtech here. Thank you very much. Anyway, so that will be donated and taken care of there. And then so the PTA went further in and we bought horse troughs and potting soil for the plants for the kids. Now this garden is a growing and growth in progress, so look for more to come with this.
I just want to say thank you for coming tonight and being recognized, and thank you for everything you've done to help support our kids.
I would entertain a motion.
Recommend approval.
Second.
Have a motion and second to approve the donation from the Liberty Elementary Parent Teacher Association of a concrete slab for a greenhouse. The greenhouse will be purchased with activity funds. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate it very much.
Next item.
Thank you. I'm also seeking your approval for a bid submitted by Matthews Ford to provide one Ford Expedition, one Ford F-250 pickup truck, one Ford Transit 250 cargo van as district fleet vehicles in the amount of $92,097. Payment would come from the 2015 bond funds. Bids were solicited in accordance with the Competitive Bid Act. These will be replacement vehicles. We'll surplus some other vehicles and these will replace them. I believe we solicited bids from 8 different dealers. We only received one back. So with Ms. Menavalis, we researched the costs from last year and we don't believe rebidding would save us any money.
Is this the 2015 or the 2009?
I'm sorry, it's 2009, isn't it?
Because it says 2009 here on the minutes.
We're
It's still 2009.
Okay.
2009. My apologies.
Okay.
All right. Are there other questions? I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and second to approve the bid submitted by Matthews Ford, providing one Ford Expedition and one Ford F-250 four-wheel drive regular cab and one Ford Transit 250 cargo van as fleet vehicles for the district. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you.
The next item under instructional services, Mr. Mark Officer.
Good evening, President Kelly, Dr. Mendenhall, members of the board. Dr. Dunlop asked me to give a brief summary of where we are with our OER textbooks, Open Educational Resource textbooks. Basically, the synopsis of that is we go online or wherever really and grab a bunch of resources from different open public domains and pull them into a textbook type utility for our classrooms, and we do that. We've done that in several different areas, and this evening I'll just kind of give you a brief synopsis of those and what's kind of gone from being an idea that Ms. Morales, one of our instructional specialists, brought to me a couple years ago that I thought was frankly crazy, and so we took it to Dr. Dunlop and she said, I think we should do it. It's grown to something that's just insane, really. So clearly I was wrong. We'll start off by saying that, and I'm glad they didn't listen to me. I want to start off by saying that this is 100% driven by our instructional specialists. It's important that you hear that. I know that this has been a difficult few months budget-wise, and it could have been really expedient just to reduce those positions. I appreciate that you did not do that. Along with this evening, these ladies do some amazing things every day for our kids and for our teachers. They make us better every day, and they make us look really good. And so I appreciate that. And not only these 5 that I'll introduce this evening, but also the 2 that work with Mrs. Peterson and Margie Moore and Amy Bruner are just invaluable assets to our district. So I want to just take a minute to introduce them this evening. 4 of the 5 are here, so I must embarrass them. Ms. Morales, will you guys please stand when I call you? Ms. Morales is our science instructional specialist. Ms. Weingardner is our math instructional specialist. Ms. Goodenough is history. And then Ms. Johnson, Beth Johnson, is our technology instructional specialist. and all of them have played. Miss Susie Holt, I'm sorry, is not able to join us this evening. She is at swim lessons with her boys. But they are all five play important roles in this process. So I wanted to introduce them first and tell them thank you for all their work. So how are they written? Again, the instructional specialists drive the process. They've kind of got it down to a science a little bit. They call 5 to 6 teachers in a room, pull together, usually start off with 2 days, decide on which subject areas the teachers are most on board with and we feel most prepared to move forward with. During those 2 days, they start pulling in resources, grab our standards, look at a standard, grab some resources for that standard, and just start marching down those lists. During the process, they can also grab some media stuff off the internet, some different links. They brought in other districts to both observe the process and to help in the process. They brought in some experts. Mrs. Goodenough specifically has brought in some retired military personnel who wrote some books related to those content areas. So they've really done a good job. And then they, like I said before, they start grabbing resources from multiple different areas to kind of curate a textbook, basically. When they do this, one of the things I really wanted to point out as we're moving to embedded time next year is they keep the PLC process in mind. So they try to write those in a way that will actually encourage and stimulate the PLC process by adding common formative assessments to the book and some of those items. So where we are today, we've completed several books that were used this year. 13, I believe, in total, but I've listed those there. I don't want to read those to you, but we've had several books that were used this year. Some of them are actually in textbook form. Some of them are just more in a loose form where we've just brought in lots of resources to be used. But again, across all 4 core areas, that has been done, as well as a little bit in technology, where Ms. Johnson has helped in writing a 4th grade computer resource, as well as she's currently helping us with our redoing of all the middle school curriculum, computer curriculum, I apologize. The cost, we've kind of narrowed it down to this. It seems like it's costing us around $2,000 per book in substitute costs. I mentioned we start off with 2 days. After those 2 days, the teachers will go back and start manipulating that book some and think about it, and then we'll bring them back again and eventually end up using about 5 days for each book. The subcost also would be about $1,000 for every revision year. This year, Ms. Morales, this is the 2nd year we're going to use the science books, and so she brought in some teachers to do revisions on those, which is one of the best things about OER books. You're not stuck with a book for 6 years. You can redo, you can add, you can take away, you can just change as kids use them. So about $1,000 for every renew. And then the printing cost for our middle school books, as we're not one-to-one yet, it varies a little bit, but we're, Ms. Morales and I have asked for bids from several different vendors this school year in an attempt to get the best possible cost in that printing. And we're still evaluating how many copies of those we're going to print, as we just received the great news that we get no textbook allocation. So here's kind of a 3-year plan. Again, I won't read that all to you, but you'll see that the goal there is to add some subject areas in each of the core areas. I did not put a column on there for computers. We will be changing up how we do computers, really 6 through 12, and also I know that there's some plans in the elementary area to do that too, so that would be a 5th column in addition to the 4 cores. Why we love it? Well, let me count the ways. There's lots of reasons that we really love this. Part of it is we can correlate directly to our standards. So I believe the last edit for this coming year, our 8th grade science book, for example, is around 300 pages. Well, in an average year, you would buy a textbook that has 500 to 600 pages. So you can imagine that's a lot of information that does not match our standards, that our teachers get bogged down in trying to filter through, and whether or not it's good or bad, and whether or not it should be taught or shouldn't, and so that helps. Local exemplars makes the books more engaging. You'll see a Broken Arrow football player or basketball player or our stadium in various parts of the book so that kids can see us. We can also do multimedia links for local exemplars. That's pretty neat. I mentioned earlier that it can be updated yearly. The PLC process, I mentioned that earlier also. One of the funnest things about this process has been that we've been able to share. You might remember that there was a district on the west side of the state that had a fire a few months ago, and we were able to share all of our OERs with them to help in that situation, so that was fun. Additionally, we get requests pretty regularly. Dr. Dunlop has not been shy about sharing our progress in this category, and so we've gotten lots of requests from districts around the state, and most recently, the folks at the State Department referred us to the Federal Department of Education, and we've had a few phone calls with their Educational Technology Division, as well as a few shared emails. They have you can Google this, it's called #GoOpen. The national movement to use OER resources, and they have some information on the educational technology site of the Federal Department of Education, and they're considering adding us. Looks like we would be probably the 10th district in the nation to be an ambassador district for that site, which would just mean that we agree to help others who are in the process of writing these. So that's kind of exciting too, and that's what I meant when I said it's grown to crazy proportions here. And then the last one is teacher buy-in. We've had, I think we stopped and counted the other day, around 100 teachers work on the different books throughout the different buildings in the district, which is exciting when you consider how many teachers have been involved in that process. We've seen teachers go from this is a bad idea, thought like me, to being really on board, like me. And we've one example of that is there was a teacher who was just not excited. And so, of course, Becky brought her into the process to be involved in writing. And one day she called and was just pumped because next year we can add the rock slide that occurred on I-35 into the book. So we've seen lots of movement with teachers. Number 8 is accessible from anywhere. That link takes you to, I think I used Sequoiah's webpage. It's basically students, no matter where they are, can get on their site's webpage and find the OER textbooks. And then also, it makes it easy for us to share. We've had so many requests to share that we've kind of created a document that all on one Google Doc. It gives a brief paragraph explaining the process a little bit, and also how we are more than happy to share. And then we've put links to all of the books that we've curated the last few months on one page, so that now we can just share the baschools.org/OERs with any district around, and they can access any and all of our books. And when I say access, I mean that they're able to take those and they can make their own copy and edit that copy as much as they would like, and call it their own. They can take our tiger off and put their tiger on. So it's the agreement with OER Commons is that if you create something, you share it with everybody. So that's what we've been
I think
doing.
it's very exciting, and one of the things that I really certainly appreciate is that by looking at the state budget, obviously we know that this is a cost savings when we're doing this as well. I certainly want to thank those individuals who are certainly on the front lines working with our staff and working with others to create these resources, which are so vital for those that work in our classrooms. And I know the teachers in the classrooms greatly appreciate it too, especially when the textbooks are more relevant or when the information that they engage with are more relevant to their students and more relevant to what they do day to day. So I know this is a process of work, but the encouraging thing in our district is we're willing to try new things, and we're bringing newer and better things to our student population as a result of it, which means they're going to be more successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Dunlop, and thank you to our instructional specialists. Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is
Was that just an info or action?
Discussion.
It was just discussion.
Okay.
The next one's,
All right, the next item on the agenda is Miss Debbie Renz.
Good evening again. I'm bringing to you tonight for your approval a renewal agreement between Broken Arrow Public Schools and Rehab Source for Kids. This is the agency that provides our OT, occupational therapy, and physical therapy for our students with special needs for the upcoming school year, 16-17 school year. Total cost to the district is approximately $600,000 and will be paid with the general funds.
Okay, other questions?
I have a question. With the OT and the PT, if the student's parent signs this, we can be reimbursed. Is that the Medicaid senior care that is reimbursed or not?
If they are Medicaid eligible for the period of time in which they receive the services, yes, we can bill for.
The district is reimbursed.
The district gets a portion of that reimbursed, yeah.
I just wondered how much we actually get an offset, or if we have any idea.
I can't really give you an exact percentage right now because there is a.
But we're required to provide all of these services.
Correct. We are required to provide these services. So the fact that they're documenting at a level that we can build those services and get reimbursed from Medicaid is a bonus because in the past we hadn't done this.
The only reason I ask is just because it is $600,000 from the general funds, which means quite a few teachers, if we didn't have to pay it. So I just want to make sure that we do have to provide it and that some of it's being reimbursed.
Right, and $600,000, it does seem like a huge chunk. It is a huge chunk. But if you looked at the possibility of having to hire the staff as full-time Broken Arrow employees with the benefits, I think you would find that your bill would be a lot higher than that.
Okay. Other questions? I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the renewal agreement between Broken Arrow Public Schools and Rehab Source for Kids, providing OT, PT for students with special needs for the 2016-17 school year. The total cost of the district is approximately $600,000 and will be paid with general funds. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Ms. Luann Goodacre.
Good evening, President Kelly, Dr. Mendenhall, members of the board. Tonight, I'm going to ask for your approval to process commodities for the next school year. We, again this year, went in with several other school districts to bid our processed commodities. We'd like to process chicken from Tyson's in the amount of $128,628. Asian Food Solutions in the amount of $101,810. Pork from JTM in the amount of $21,242. Pork from Asian Food Solutions in the amount of $15,350. Beef with Advanced Pierre in the amount of $39,027. And beef with Integrated, $28,356. Do you have any questions?
If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the purchase of commodity processed chicken from Tyson in the amount of $128,628. Chicken from Asian Food Solutions in the amount of $101,810. Pork from JTM in the amount of $21,242. Pork from Asian Food Solutions in the amount of $15,350. Beef from Advanced Pierre in the amount of $39,027. And beef from Integrated in the amount of $28,356. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes. The next item, Mr. Brian Daly.
Good evening. Before I bring you my action item to vote on as a board, I wanted to preface it with some information leading up to your vote on some denial of service filtering protection that we're going to ask for approval on for some proactive measures. You should have a packet in front of you, and we'll have some stuff on the screen that I'll go through real quick before we get to the vote. As we all know, and some of you in this room, we had some outside activity last month that compromised some of our internet connectivity from the outside. I'm going to go through a couple of things that kind of describes what that is so that what you're approving makes more sense. Right after spring break, we noticed some activity on our internet link on the outside of our district that managed to manifest and grow over time and led into our state testing window. And that activity began right after spring break and ended around May 9th. And I kind of want to describe to you what they call a DDoS attack, which is a denial of service attack. And really, as you can see in its simplest form, what a denial of service attack does, it uses several computers from around the world. They're scattered across the internet, and they're programmed to send continuous floods of messages and requests to overwhelm your network. So they'll take pieces of data from thousands and thousands of machines across the planet, from victims in their home, and they'll combine to send data in large chunks to overwhelm somebody's internet circuit, mostly businesses. And really at the beginning of an attack, the symptoms might be slower or unnoticed, and it kind of builds up over time until your internet connection really becomes unusable. And that's kind of what happened with us. At spring break, it was very small amounts of data, and then kind of build up around state testing to an amount of data that was able to compromise our internet connection. Just to give you an idea, in the last couple of years, there's been a 180% increase in denial of service attacks aimed at K-12 and higher education. And this is from the Center for Digital Education. And really the motivation behind attacks is really varied. It could be outside threats, it could be internal threats. We have a complicated organization to secure, mainly because we don't only have to worry about outside threats, but we have to worry about the 19,000 internal threats as well, where most organizations don't really have to worry about that when they just have a regular employee base. However, we have students to look after. So I gave you a couple examples that you can see in your packet. Most of these attacks will hit K-12 districts or higher ed institutions at any time without warning or indication of when they will stop. More than 7,000 attacks happen every day. 60% of all organizations were attacked last year. They're increasing, and anyone can really launch an attack. And until they start coming down harder on hackers, if you can find them, they will continue. There's free tools out there. There's DDoS for hire sites. You can rent botnets and do it yourself. So they make it really easy for anybody to initiate a denial of service attack. So it's really important that you become proactive and try to defend yourself against that. As you can see in our top industries affected by denial of service attacks, education is now listed in there with gaming institutions, financial institutions, retail and consumer goods, and hotel and motel. So education has made the list. It used to be that hackers or people attempting DDoS were only interested in bringing down connections that affected for-profit industries, such as a Walmart or a Target, because it was more notoriety. Now it's just about, let's see if we can do it. So education has made the list, even though there's really not a profit involved for these folks. More notoriety and news headlines. In order to prepare for a DDoS attack, as the internet grows, becomes more rogue, there's still really no regulations when it comes to the internet. You have other countries that want to form attacks. Our attack consisted of a lot of data that came from China, North Korea, a lot from Russia. A lot of these countries have their own hacker organizations. They have their own country filters where they try to, a lot of these oppressed countries want to keep their own people from utilizing the internet. So they'll stick viruses out there, and if people use certain applications to circumvent that, they'll punish you by bringing viruses in the form of a DDoS attack. So you have to look out for that. DDoS attacks have an 80% chance of reoccurrence unless proactive methods are put into place. A cybersecurity plan really should be implemented and include monitoring, mitigating, preparing, and communicating. Unfortunately, as a K-12 school district, we don't have the staff like a One Oak or a Chesapeake or a Devon Energy, where they'll hire a complete staff and all they do all day long is monitor and watch for these things to take place, and they're able to mitigate them right away. And unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity with our staffing and the way our budget is. So the best practice really to prevent this kind of thing in the future is to deploy proactive and reactive solutions, implement monitoring procedures, strengthen internal security measures, and also check cybersecurity capabilities of other vendors. As we move to the cloud, now we use a lot of vendors whose resources are out on the internet. We need to make sure that they're protecting themselves as well, because as we connect to their environment through the internet, whether it's our accounting system or an instructional piece of software, we need to make sure they're protecting themselves so that we don't inherit trouble in the form of a DDoS attack from their environment. So we really need to start checking out our vendors more. With that said, since the DDoS attack happened, Cox Communications was able to help us out and put us on their DDoS filtering protection through Newstar, which is a company that owns scrubbing centers, and they basically scrub the bad data and send us the good data. So we rerouted our traffic in May, and that's about May 9th. Our internet opened up, our 1 gig pipe, and the DDoS attack went away. Unfortunately, we're not able to reside on the Cox filtering forever. It was a courtesy for them to allow us to use their DDoS filtering while we figured out what we wanted to do long term. Fortunately, about 90 days ago, Newstar and Cox Business started offering a DDoS protection service. And basically what this does is imagine a gigantic filter around the world. This one that we've been using is down in Atlanta. The idea is once an attack starts, a filter comes up automatically. Once it detects an attack, starts to filter your data before it even reaches the Oklahoma circuit and starts to or attempts to overwhelm your firewall. I do want to say our firewall performed as advertised. We actually have 2 firewalls running in a redundant mode. We never had a data breach. We never had intrusion. What happened is our 1 gig circuit was saturated with 5 gig of data. So the firewall was doing its job by dumping the bad data and not letting anything through, but with that said, we couldn't get out either because there was too much knocking at the front door. What this filter will do is block that bad traffic when there is a DDoS attack way upstream before it even hits our firewall, so that we're able to still maintain and function as normal while the DDoS attack is mitigated from elsewhere. So the folks here from their day-to-day business won't notice anything as we're mitigating that. So you can see on the graph provided, this is a graph sent to us through Cox. It shows on May 9th when the attack was really at its peak. You can see the red is the bad data, and it was hitting us at 5 gigs of data, and again we have a 1 gig pipe, so you can imagine the reason we couldn't get out. As soon as we implemented the filter, you can see on the very next day it dropped to 3 gig, and then by end of day, May 10th, the attack was gone, and that's when you start seeing all green, which is considered good data. And then the smaller areas are the weekends, and then you can see around May 20th when school let out, we're well under a gig on our data. So the green is good on the graph. The idea, again, is to have a filter in place so when an attack does happen again and it gets up to the 5 gig range, it's mitigated from afar, doesn't reach our firewalls, and this scenario will take place without affecting us. So that graph kind of tells you what our data looked at that time where we peaked with that DDoS attack. Traditionally, this service is relatively expensive because it's new. It's kind of like having the cure for something that a lot of people don't have. A lot of Fortune 500 companies use these proactive means to keep their network functioning. A lot of large internet sites like Amazon and eBay have to use these things because obviously they rely on the internet for their services. Traditionally, this service would cost about $167,000 a year just to have something in place proactive-wise. It's kind of like having insurance. You may not get an attack, and you may get an attack, but you want to make sure if you ever do get attacked, you're able to mitigate it on the fly and at that moment. So obviously with budget cuts statewide, $167,000 wasn't doable, so we negotiated education pricing, which they haven't done before since this is so new to education, with Cox and New Star, and we were able to get that price tag down by 71% to a roughly annual fee of $49,000. So this negotiated price is also going to be offered to other districts that are interested in this service as well, such as TPS, Union, and Jinx, who have expressed interest in this type of protection. So the negotiation went well, and that 71% is substantial savings for something like DDoS proactive threat detection.
Mr. Daly, I have a question.
Yes.
As far as the Education Service Center and the business functions, we were down probably, what, 3-4 days?
Right, so the attack began to build up right after spring break. It wasn't noticeable at the time because we do have a 1 gig link, so it takes a while to fill that up. And usually what DDoS attackers do is they start probing to see what they can get at, and they start to increase their attack methods and how much data they're sending at you. So right about May 3rd, the week of May 3rd, the attack stepped up, and then for about 3 or 4 days it was pretty heavy. And unfortunately, that took place right around our state testing time period. We thought we may have to ask for an online extension with the State Department, which they initially granted. However, we were able to get testing completed by Friday the 13th. As you can see by the graph, by the 10th, the attack had subsided. It's about 3 or 4 days full force. And that was the reason that Cox allowed us to use their DDoS filter, which is through the same company, New Star, so that we could take the attack off of our circuit, move it down to Atlanta where they could mitigate it, and we could continue our state testing. So essentially what we want to do is have that same filter in place ongoing, and what will happen is if we sense an attack again, it'll automatically come up for us. Then we'll get a phone call that says you have an attack that's imminent. We've gone ahead and started filtering it and rerouting your traffic for you, and then you wait for it to disappear. Attacks can last 8 hours. I think the longest was one in Great Britain that lasted a complete 2 weeks. It just depends on how aggressive the attack is. So this one was big enough to where we were able to get the substantial savings. It was big enough to where most of you heard some things on the news about it or the media. It was large enough to where law enforcement was interested in it and where it came from, and they're investigating some things for us. And being a large public school district, that allowed for that interest. So before we get to asking for the approval, any questions on the attack in general, or I know it's kind of high level stuff, but
I think you did a great job of explaining it, and the information that you provided is excellent, but certainly if there are questions, would entertain those.
Okay.
This is annual pricing, happens every year. How long is this gonna last? How long will we have to pay this? Just once?
Well, annually it'll be the $49,957. Okay, we'll pay annually. And
for how long? Forever? Or
as long as we feel we want to be protected from DDoS attacks.
Will it ever go down from that, you think? Negotiated down?
I think as more districts get on board, more higher education institutions, more DDoS becomes more prevalent. It's going to get to the point, kind of like car insurance, you're going to have it because eventually you're going to get in a car accident, eventually you're going to get a DDoS attack. And like I said in the report, once you get it, there's an 80% chance you'll get it again. So we're going to probably want to budget for that ongoing to protect ourselves.
That's what I'm getting at, I guess.
David, I mean, I know we said business was basically shut down for 3 or 4 business days, so was there any, and I know this is a swag, but, you know, I mean, is there a swag against the assessed value or cost of something like that? I mean, I know it's a hard number to come up with, but I think it's a point of reference.
Law enforcement has asked us for some of the costs involved, and when you are a not-for-profit, a lot of that soft cost, or a lot of, if we were a for-profit, this is how much money would have been expended. We had a lot of help from our third-party technology vendors that came in and helped us at no cost. We had a lot of help from Cox Business by putting them on our filter. You saw how expensive the filter was for business folks, where they didn't charge us. And then you have the cost of departments such as payroll being down, finance being down, HR department not being able to function and do their routine things. So we have fixed a cost to that, and what it would have been if we were a for-profit, what it would have cost me if I was charged for some of those outside services. We also included the cost of this DDoS service that I'm asking for approval to law enforcement, so they could see, hey, we're having to do this as a proactive measure ongoing because of that. And we submitted those costs to law enforcement so that they could use that to gauge how much they wanted to, let's say, prosecute if they were able to find a source. So,
do other companies offer this other than Cox News Star or whatever? I mean,
other companies do. Most of the time what you'll see now is they're software based, so they're not as robust. We feel confident using Newstar just because of the size of our data. If we were a smaller, like a doctor's office or a small law firm, I could go with a software based DDoS protection. But being the size we are and the amount of data that we pump out of the district, really a hardware solution is our best case. This is a filter that uses Arbor equipment that Verizon and Sprint and AT&T use to protect their network. Cox uses to protect their network. You know, these are learning machines with filters the size of this boardroom that filter our data and provide us the good data out of it in the case of in the event of an attack. At this time, because of their reputation and the research we've done, I feel confident with Newstar, and also that's what Cox utilizes for their own DDoS protection, which protects you at home and protects their environment as a business.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I obviously don't understand any of this, but I'm just going to ask a question.
Okay.
When we had the attack, you said at one point it could be 8 hours, could be, I don't know, 80 days or whatever. If we hadn't gotten with Cox and used this filter, would we still be down?
That's hard to say because two things could have happened. State testing ended, or was getting ready to end. Sometimes you don't know by bringing up that filter, and we ask the same questions.
I guess I'm just asking, is this something, because when you talk about hackers and you talk about international people, you know, hacking, I almost foresee, well, okay, so we buy this, and then they get better, and they get around that. I mean, I don't understand it, obviously.
Right. It's hard to say once you bring the filter up if they are deterred by the filter because they know they're not going to get anywhere, and then they stop their activity. And sometimes an event will end an attack. As I said, so state testing ends, so there's no reason to continue an attack. School ends, somebody got what they wanted, or the filter coming up was the deterrent to end the hacking. You never know what ends it. The idea is to prevent it from reaching you while it is taking place. Sometimes you can find the source internally. It might be a machine that has a particular virus on it that became the victim that you identify, pull it off the network, and then the attack stops because the host doesn't have a victim to to reach any longer. So it's a multitude of things. New Star, that's all they do is DDoS. They do it for the federal government. They do it for NASDAQ, all the other companies I mentioned. So they're continually, when I say they have learning computers, those are things that we'll never have because they're so expensive. They learn the threats. They learn the type of attacks. They stay a step ahead of the hackers' tools. That way they're able to filter it. It's kind of like a large HEPA filter. The data comes into one filter. By the next one, it's smaller amount of bad data, and by the time it gets through the 15th filter, nothing's coming out but good data, and then that gets routed back to us through our firewall.
So in the future, we approve this, let's say, and in the future, you said you'll get a call that there's a imminent danger. I mean, will we ever know if we got our money's worth? That, you know, it worked or that it didn't work? I mean, it sounds to me so ambiguous.
It is, and that's why I equate it to insurance. I mean, it's like buying life insurance when you're 25 years old and healthy. You never know what's going to happen. But when you have a family to look after, in the case something happened, you're going to wish you had it. I have to look after the district with 2,500 employees and 19,000 pieces of student data. Hopefully, we won't have to use it. I mean, that's a good thing. But in the case that we do,
do you think it'll be preventative in the future if this were to happen again? I mean, you're smarter than I am. I'm just saying. You think this is the way to go?
I do, because anymore, and I'll be honest, a couple years ago it wasn't the case. 45% of my job now is based around network security. Because it's increased so much. If anybody wants to get into information security and you got kids, I'm telling you that's the way to go. It's never going to end. DDoS is going to become more prevalent. You're going to see, I guarantee, more districts attached to this service in the next year or two because it's becoming so prevalent, both higher ed and K-12. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. And it's really taken a proactive course to protecting us. You know, it used to be you could throw a couple firewalls up, get them programmed, and only worry about somebody intruding in and gathering social security numbers. That's not the case anymore. Now people want to bring down your internet connection. We are doing other things besides the filtering to be proactive. We're increasing our internet length this summer from 1 gig to 4 gig. We're adding 2 circuits instead of 1. So if one fails, we fail over to the other one. They both load balance and they back each other up, so that if a circuit is compromised, we have a failover. But the idea with the filter upstream, not even on the Oklahoma circuit, on the another side of the world, is so the bad data never reaches our data center, and you guys don't skip a beat. Really, the only one that should know we're under attack is our technology department. When they call us and say somebody is sending a brute force attack your way, they're trying to use this type of attack, we raised our filters and we're going to wait for it to go away before we lower them, but you guys will continue as normal. That's kind of what we want. So if you think about it as insurance, it may help you out. The same reason we have parents buy our Chromebook insurance. They may never have to use it, but they're going to wish they did if something happened to that device. This is kind of the same thing for me.
Mr. Daly, if there's a breach and it fails, will they cover any hard costs that are associated with our recovery or anything to that effect?
That's a question I can ask if there's a monetary type reimbursement. They have 5 scrubbing centers across the world that they use. The chances of all of them going down are slim. If that was the case, what would happen is our firewalls would protect us again. That the largest amount of data you saw on the graph was 5 gig. So even at a 4 gig circuit that we moved to, you know, at some point if we got hit, if all those scrubbing centers went down, we'd have an issue, but we'd at least be able to protect the intrusion from coming into the district, because our firewalls would do the work until we could mitigate it or they got their scrubbing centers back up. But and all the time that Cox has been in business, they haven't had one of the new star scrubbing centers go down on them yet. That's a good question I can ask about
Yeah, I was just wondering.
how to insure in the case they have a
Because you
failure.
speak about insurance, and I'm in that field as well, and I'm thinking cyber liability insurance
Mhm.
for monetary damages that the district may occur. So if this pays that or what have you, so.
That's probably something you're seeing become more common also,
It's-
cyber liability insurance. We don't think about it at our own homes or on our day-to-day with our phones or our iPads, but an enterprise network our size, where our network, I will tell you, is bigger than Chesapeake. It is bigger than Devon Energy. That's how big our Broken Arrow network is. So we should be able to protect ourselves the same.
We're seeing a lot of ransom. They steal your data and want
the
you to
crypto
pay
lock.
them some bitcoins to get your data back. So that's what some of my clients are saying. So
If there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the new agreement between Broken Arrow Public Schools and Cox Communication, providing third-party filtering protection against outside threats to our internet connections. Total cost to the district will not exceed $49,957.92. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item under Business Services, Ms. Natalie Eno.
Evening. We are rapidly wrapping up this fiscal year. Our state aid allocation looks a little bit deceiving. You know, we've been talking about cuts since the beginning of January. It looks like we're ahead of where we were at this time last year. Actually, that number would be a lot greater had we not been cut. Our student growth from the previous fiscal year to this fiscal year is actually covering some of that lag that we're seeing in funding. And that really carries across to our state sources where FBA is recorded. Ad valorem has come in as expected. We collect about 97% of what we budget, which is a positive thing for the district. And also, as Mr. Thompson mentioned earlier in his presentation, we are expecting one final cut to be received from our state aid allocation in June. So by the time it all said and done, we actually may be less than where we were to wrap up school year 15-16. Building fund, everything is pretty much wrapped up in this fund. Our ad valorem collections have come in strong, which goes toward our end goal of building up our fund balance in this fund. And child nutrition, we are over-collected from all three areas of funding due to strong participation and feeding more kiddos. Our child nutrition department is very self-sufficient, and we are very grateful for that fact as they cover all of their own payroll and expenses, food expenses, and all of that. We're very lucky in that respect. General fund, we've really remained conservative among the areas that we can control our spending in. Consumable expenses, travel, really everything has been scrutinized, and at this point in the year we're really operating on last emergency only purchases, summer school related expenditures, and trying to conserve everything to maintain our ending fund balance. Building fund, like I mentioned earlier, we are in a better position than where we were last year because we had some one-time expenditures, and so our fund balance will be that much more stronger as we start off the beginning of next year. And child nutrition, they, like I said, they're very self-sufficient. Their payroll costs have remained fairly stable from where we were last year. Their food expenditures have increased a little bit, but they are feeding more kids, and they've expanded programs such as the summer feeding program with the expansion of their food truck. Also, workers' comp expense in child nutrition and in general fund have been lower than what we have projected from years forward, so that just protects those funds from being paid out of general and child nutrition into our self-insured workers' comp fund. And you can see we have changed our fund balance estimate. We've stated $14 million for the majority of this year, and we have lowered that to down by $1 million to 13 as the cuts that we have experienced during this year in 15-16 have been absorbed by our fund balance. So we do expect that to be decreased by about $1 million by the time all is said and done.
Are there questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, Ms. Donna Dollahan.
Good evening. I'm here to give the treasurer's reports for the end of May. Our cash balance report shows a total of $62,368,000 for the district. Included in this total are investments that total $55,190,000. The collateral pledged to the district is $56,575,000. Our deposits that require collateral total $33,064,000, leaving an available balance of collateral in the amount of $23,511,000.
Okay, are there questions? Thank you.
Okay, in the activity funds, receipts at the end of May total $6,749,000. Disbursements total $5,416,000, leaving a cash balance in the activity funds of $3,196,000.
If there are no questions,
Thank you.
Yes. The next item, Ms. Kathy Metabalis.
Good evening. My first item tonight is the encumbrance report. There are encumbrances tonight of $2,189,025.55 from May 5th to June 2nd. Would recommend your approval of those encumbrances.
Okay, are there questions? I would entertain a motion.
Recommend approval. Second.
Have a motion and second to approve the encumbrance reports for all funds for the 2015-16 fiscal year. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Next item is the change order report reflecting a decrease of $369,576.88, and I would recommend your approval for those change orders.
Okay, if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the change order reports for all funds for the 2015-16 fiscal year. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, Mr. Dwayne Thompson.
Okay, we have tonight the renewal or extension of the insurance. Jim Beavers is here if you have questions. Also, the majority of the work we're going to this, Kathy does. Basically what we want to do is, we had a 2-year period. The last year we approved and we had a guaranteed reduction. We asked on the property side, we asked for an extension and said if we somewhat go with the 2-year commitment, obviously the board has to approve that annually. Can we get another either hold or a reduction for the second year? We do have a small reduction for the second year. What we anticipate that would be absorbed with adding of new facilities, but still it's positive if we way we're going here. One thing that is a little different on this one is you will see $1,800 for drone liability. One of the things in our current policy, obviously, if that was to fall out of the sky and hit someone or property, that is not covered in our current insurance. And so what we're doing is covering that for the activities that we have. Now, just want to clarify, that's the one we use for communications. There are smaller ones that they use the classes for specific things. That is completely separate. But the main drone that we have that you see from the lip dub or whatever that are shooting the aerial shots, that's to cover that. And so it gives us liability on that. Overall, though, when you even add that in, that the total for all the coverages from general liability and property and all that is less than we paid in this fiscal year, which will help us out. So I don't know if you have any specific questions. I will also want to point out, just as a note, and thanks to Jim and his team, given the budget cuts that we have had, they also reduced proportionally their commission, which they didn't have to do, but they did that just to recognize, you know, how difficult it has been, and I did want to make sure I acknowledge that. So, any questions that you have in regard to our insurance coverage?
Any questions?
Just one.
Sure.
Just one quick question on the drone liability. Is that? I know that's kind of a relatively new technology, and you see it all across the nation. But not being in the insurance business, why is that not covered under our traditional P&C, like property and casualty or something like that?
Yeah, that's his gig.
It's in the air.
All of the general liability policies contain an absolute exclusion for aviation liability. The FAA decided that this particular kind of drone is considered a commercial because it is not being used strictly for instructional purposes. The other four that you have are, and so they are covered under the general liability policy because of the definition that the FAA has given it.
If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and second to approve the quotes for the district insurance for the 2016-17 school year from OSIG General Liability, $98,785, Auto Liability, $131,713, Educators Legal Liability, $98,785, from Lexington Property, $536,553, and from Alliance, $1,800. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
I would
Thank you.
like to say thank you very much for giving a cut to the commissions. That means a lot. It's greatly appreciated.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, the next item is Mr. Dwayne Thompson again.
So the last item we have here is the excess work comp policy. It's $73,669. It is a slight increase over where we were last year, but obviously it's based solely off of amount of payroll. So that is how they make that calculation. Depending on circumstances of this year, you may even see that premium in the future go down. But with that, as we're self-insured, this is basically our coverage to help us if we have a large catastrophic event. Then this was when the insurance would kick in as either $450,000 on a specific incident or $1 million aggregate. And actually, you know, when we were talking about it the other day, back in, I can't remember the exact year, 2011, we're approaching $1 million on that year, and so at that point that coverage from then would kick in to start making that coverage, and the district would no longer be making those payments. So that's what it's for, is to cover us both in the short increment with one loss and aggregate. So and this is obviously much cheaper than we would pay if we were having full coverage, that they were handling all the claims for us.
If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the quote from Safety National for district's excess worker compensation policy for the 2016-17 school year for a premium of $73,669. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes. The next item on the agenda is new business. Seeing that we do not have any, we'll move to the next item, which is the executive session.
Make a motion to move to executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve moving into executive session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations with the BAEA pursuant to 25 OS 307B2, 528 of the Oklahoma Open Meeting Act. Please call the roll.
Dr. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Everyone have a good evening.